Live from Mr. Gold's Pawn Shop, this is Derailed Trains of Thought. Well, hello, Nick.
Hi, Tim. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Did you have a good Christmas?
Very good Christmas. Yeah, it was a good Christmas. Then we went on our annual ski trip, which was enjoyable.
Awesome. So New
Year's Eve I spent with 30, almost 40 youth all night. And then that next day we drove up for a ski trip.
Oh, yes.
So I slept.
You slept during the ski trip or you slept while you were skiing?
We slept during going up.
Going up to the ski.
Yeah, Natasha drove and I slept. And then I was basically back on track.
Gotcha. Well, I had a nice holiday season too. Probably spent more than I should have and things, but no, it was all good and merry and bright. And glad to be back with you all, folks. This is Timothy Deal.
This is Nick Hayden.
Welcome to episode 52 of Derailed Trains of Thought. Hey, it's a new year, new episode 52. You could say it's the new 52.
Oh, there we go. And now you can make a goal every week to listen to a new podcast.
That's right.
Our podcast, our new episode.
Yes, yeah. We have one for you every week of the year, so listen to them all. And we're coming to you tonight from one of our old sponsors.
Yeah, we listened to our 50th anniversary.
Mm-hmm. You know,
50th episode.
50th episode. Yeah, not 50 yet. We're not that old.
Not yet.
But yeah, Mr. Gold's Pawn Shop. They have everything here you could ask for.
Anything that needs to be
for
taken care of.
For price.
Changed, cursed, listened to, transformed.
Tracked down. They usually have something here.
Yeah.
Even if you left it, in a previous life,
exactly.
They usually have
different world, different life, whatever, different body.
Hey, it's all here, dearie. At least that's what he tells us. Well, with that, we'll just dive into the beginning of the new year. Before we get into story school, we should give you our first project update. If you've been following us on Facebook, you may have heard about our new spin-off podcast.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yay!
We're spinning off everywhere.
Spinning like a crazy hedgehog. Our new spin-off podcast is called The Weekly Hijack.
And it comes out every week and it hijacks your brain.
It's something we've been wanting to do for a while. You could almost say sort of a spin-off specifically of our take on Tales. But,
yeah.
We talk about TV a lot. Well, we
certain episodes of certain shows a lot.
We talk about, we'll be honest. We talk about Lost a lot. So Lost just seemed like the natural first fit for this. I mean, we talk about other TV too. Yeah. Once Upon a Time, for example.
Yeah.
Which we'll
maybe
get to.
Someday Babylon 5.
Yeah, that's in our dreams, but we knew
not as many people can have access to that. So
right. So we figured let's start with Lost. We probably talk about that a little more than Babylon 5 anyway on the podcast. And so basically what it is it's a rewatch. You get our immediate reactions right after we finish the episode.
We don't plan anything. We just turn on the computer and talk.
Yep. And it's much more rough than what we get here. Thankfully, we were at a point now that the podcast can have a clear distinction between the professional regular one and the rough and tumble, what do they call it? Guerrilla podcasting.
Guerrilla podcasting.
Of the TV reaction.
Yeah, so early every week it'll come out, and normally we'll talk about 2 episodes of TV, whether it be 2 episodes of Lost currently, but when other shows come back on, it may get moved around. And
yeah, we may joke, you get one of each, basically. Yeah. It's kind of the idea. And hopefully, usually, because we record them on Sunday nights, so hopefully that you'll get them by Tuesday or Wednesday at latest. Yeah. Maybe even Mondays I don't know if we'll be that on the ball, but
that's up to Tim. I just talk.
Yeah, but like I say, it's very, very kind of rough and tumble. We just record basically, and then we throw it out there.
It's an excuse for you to go watch Lost again.
Yeah.
Probably, though, if you're watching by yourself, you might go faster than 2 episodes a week.
That's possible, yeah.
If you're by yourself, at least.
Yeah. Or, maybe just wait till we get farther along and then just kind of binge watch and then binge listen.
And these are short little, 10 minutes an episode sort of talks.
Yep. So probably, 10 minutes per episode of the thing around.
Yeah.
Currently, like you said, we're doing 2 episodes at a time. So then it's about
20 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't hit 20 yet.
A little under. Yeah. We try to keep it a little under 20 is going to be the goal. So yeah, be looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah,
we were having fun.
It's just fun because we bring in the rest of the Hayden family that happens to be in the living room.
Whoever happens to be watching with us, they just say whatever they want if they have anything to say.
We drag some stuff out of them, as much as we can. We try not to dominate the conversation too much.
Too late.
But that's the weekly hijack. I don't know that we have much else news in terms of Children of the Wells.
Just things that are under process. But I guess, if you haven't been, go to the website, sign your email in. It's right there on the sidebar. Even though we don't have new stories, a lot of interesting blogs been coming out. I mean, I think it's been a good run of things.
That's true, yes. But definitely take a look at that because good stuff coming out. And if you haven't read, this is a good time to get reading on that. And otherwise, I think that's all we have for Project Updatedness. Yep. So we'll move on into Story School. All right, Story School today. We are going to be talking about something that's is not a real favorites in terms of storytelling right now, but it's exposition.
Exposition.
Getting your reader in on the know of kind of all the ins and outs of your world, or at least what's going on in the situation about your story.
Getting the info across. I guess my shorthand definition, just for the sake of this conversation, would be telling, not showing. Exposition.
Yes, because exposition definitely has kind of a bad reputation in pop culture commentary nowadays. Like, no one likes info dumps is what they call them a lot of times.
I think in some ways it's deserved. In other ways, there's a lot of things about exposition that is not just necessary, but can be kind of enjoyable. Mm-hmm. I'll just start with enjoyableness, but I'm sure we'll talk about the bad.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the good things because I don't think people really think about some of that stuff as much.
And okay, when I read the Harry Potter books, I'd absolutely, and I can't write like this myself. I'm not very good at saying anything directly to the audience. If you know anything about my writing, everything's very what. But I loved reading Harry Potter, like right before the end, like the second last chapter, third last chapter, where basically Harry would go to Dumbledore and say, "What just happened?" And Dumbledore would say, "I will now connect the pieces of the book for you." But the thing is, it was very exciting because suddenly it's like, oh, revelation. Oh, I see how that meant. Oh, I forgot about that. I mean, it really is just a chapter of back and forth questions, basically Harry asking the sort of questions that you're asking. And I think I'm using Harry Potter, but mysteries in general tend to have this sort of, and now we will explain everything.
Yeah, the big denouement and some mysteries is very popular, where it's like the detective gathers everyone in the room and say, "You did this, and then you did this, but then you did this. What did this mean?" And et cetera, et cetera.
I hate her so much. Flames on the side of my face. Okay.
I love how often in some like detective shows, like they'll confront the guy and he just starts spouting off a confession. It's like, you have to understand why I did this.
And the thing is, it's you're just saying stuff. It's not review. On TV now they'll flash back, they'll show how it happened, and be a little more, But just it's very satisfying sometimes to just get the answers,
right,
and just get it straight up.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes exposition is the simplest way to get information that you need kind of right off. Like I remember when writing New Wells Rising, I needed to get a lot of info about there's a certain character who was hiding things, and once it was revealed that this character had been hiding stuff, you immediately wanted to know, okay, well, why were you with this organization, this group, and then what went wrong and who are they and all this kind of stuff. And, it's just a campfire scene basically of her kind of explaining herself and explaining where this all came from.
And I can see why people, and we'll get into it, people say, oh, this is, can be lazy writing or whatever. But I think in many ways it just depends how much time you want to take to say certain things. Sometimes it's like, and it's interesting, readers I want to know things. I enjoy chapters where people are just asking questions and getting answers. I'm horrible at writing them, but I think and it is a very natural conversation. It's often connected with character moments, and I think people like character moments. Now, if it's just like, okay, this is they're talking about this for no reason, but right. when there's a normal person would ask these questions and you get them in an interesting manner. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get the exposition done, but it's still
it's still interesting.
It's still good story. Yeah, it's an interesting story.
If it's because not only are you as the sweet spot is when you as the audience are asking the same questions that the character is asking and then getting those answers.
Without it feeling like the author's like, I know you want to know this, therefore, it's not so close that you're like, he's checking it off so we can get this plot going again. It's nice when it's not just, we stop, take care of things, keep moving, where it's very, it's integrated. And I think most people nowadays, exposition is good when it's integrated well, and, it doesn't sound like people are saying things that they wouldn't say, like, yes, I go here every day to his wife, or, something absurd.
Well, and maybe we might jump back and forth between some of the good exposition and the bad exposition, but do we want to, we've been saying that early on we said it's bad in some ways, so what are some of the bad ways?
Okay. Well, some of the bad ways are just, first off, just that very forced, we're going to go see your mother in Chicago, as if,
Right. Anytime someone just says something randomly that, like, obviously the other character would know this sort of thing.
Like, or what was it? It wasn't even necessarily bad, but you could tell it just kind of stuck out. What was that? I was watching. Oh, it was. I was watching Planes today, the movie with my kids because I was off this morning.
The Cars spinoff.
Yeah. The one time, like, he just says, "I need to get above the clouds." And like, yes, it's already been implied, but he says it because it's to make sure you understand what's going on.
Oh yeah.
I guess it's interesting. Gut reaction, I think, for writers, why it's bad, I think, is because the gut reaction is it takes effort normally for people to show it instead of tell it. It's either just to say, I feel sad. He felt really sad because his dog died.
Right.
As opposed to taking half a page longer and showing him moping around the house and the empty dog bed and stuff like that.
In some ways, you can say more about how sad he was by not saying I was sad.
Yeah, because it's very intellectual. It's very cognitive. And I think maybe that's another reason it's bad, because in many ways, and again, End of a Mystery is cognitive in many ways.
That's true, yeah.
But when you exposition...
Explain?
Things that are more emotional, it lessens the story.
In some connotations, I think they call that telegraphing.
Yeah.
I think it might be more of an acting thing, though. But the idea that you're just kind of getting out the information as opposed to emoting or letting it flow from you, as opposed to just blanket, here is the message.
Well, it's interesting, when film students, we gotta watch all your, the films that you when you were in LA, they force you not to have any words.
Oh yeah.
Which basically force you not to do exposition in a easy way in any case.
Yeah, it was a very interesting exercise that they had all the students in that program do. Part of what their reasoning was not having to worry about sound. That's just one less element for you to make it a little easier theoretically. But it was also interesting in terms of, you have to think visually in your storytelling, and you have to say a lot, and sometimes people get around this by you could do voiceovers.
Yeah. I was going to ask that.
Still.
You've mentioned before in the podcast that voiceovers are generally bad.
Yeah, again, it can be kind of a cheap way around that trick, especially in terms of, like, I think we talked about the narrator, how a narrator can be a very dangerous tool if you're relying too much on your narrator to tell a story, then you don't have enough faith in your own visuals. And actually, Dark City is a movie, I showed you this, sci-fi movie, and in the original cut, the studio made them include a voiceover basically that kind of explains some of the mysteries that wouldn't have otherwise have been explained. Like, there is an exposition scene where they explain to the main character about the nature of the city and so forth, or in the original cut. And I think Blade Runner is sort of like this too, where the studio made them do more narration at first because they were afraid that the audience wouldn't be able to follow.
Studios seem to always worry that the audience is too dumb.
Yeah. That's true.
But that reminds we're talking Lost. Dan Lindelof always says that he always points to the architect scene from Matrix. Reloaded.
I think so. Yeah, that's the one with all the screens, right?
Yeah. As basically just being the death of the story. There's this massive exposition to explain all your mysteries. You know, and I think that's at least for him, the case study of not doing it well. And Lost almost never does exposition of any type. I mean,
only the very most basic. Our team was crashed here on this island.
And even that, like, you go see the weekly hijack, like they'll do a little bit like in the second, third episodes, you know.
Yeah.
But even after, once you get into a couple more episodes, they even stop doing that sort of thing. I think, from my memory, in like the pilot, I mean, they don't explain anything.
I mean, and there's still even
there's like 12 people running around in a plane crash, and no one's explaining or asking. You know, just
that's true. It's all like just very in the moment. Gotta react to this. Gotta react to this.
And it kind of set the tone for that. I mean, that show is on the far side of I remember someone commenting. I think in season 5 when they go to the lamppost and Miss Hawking's talking about how it works, and someone mentioned that for the first time, someone kind of just explained how things worked, and it was horrible. I mean, what they implied that one of the few times Lost did exposition, you could sense that the tension and the drama that Lost generally had
stopped. Dropped.
Because they had kept this idea of you never ask, you just keep moving.
Well, which is not to say that I think, that was Lost.
That's on the far end.
Yeah, Lost thrived in that sort of thing. And it's not to say that like all stories, I wouldn't say that all stories have to always avoid explaining
no.
Because like I said, Dark City, and eventually in the director's cut of that movie, he did remove the opening voiceover narration and had the explanation for it when it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's a perfect timing for it too, because not only does it explain some of the things you saw before, but it makes what follows afterward not feel like you would lose your audience if you hadn't explained by that point why some of this weird stuff was happening.
Well, and there's a lot of danger, you know, if you're very antsy about exposition, there's a lot of danger that you just can't, your audience won't follow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of deft things you can do if you know what you're doing. But like, you know, you get to the end of 2001 and you're like,
what the heck was that? Yeah.
And, you know, in some ways, the lack of exposition is one of the markers between what people call artsy and not.
Yeah.
You know, and then people claim people that explain things more directly, bad writing or bad filming, when it might just be they're concerned about different things.
Yeah.
In some ways.
No, I think that's probably true.
Before I forget, I was reading Dubliners. I haven't finished it. A lot of the short stories by James Joyce. And I was going to bring it in, and I forgot tonight. I mean, there's one chapter, and I mean, he's considered one of the greatest authors of the 20th century, et cetera, et cetera. And the first page and a half is basically like, so-and-so was had been married, and then her to a butcher, and then he died because of this thing, and then she bought, and basically it's all exposition. But I think it largely depends what's the use of it. I mean, that's all there so that when they start the story, you have all this background. And it's told very well.
Sure.
Even though it's being told to you, it's building a sense of emotion, a sense of understanding, as opposed to, you know, just we'll insert this here just so I don't have to deal with it. Even though you need to know the plot, but it doesn't have anything to do with the plot.
Sure. Speaking of exposition at the beginning of stories like that, let's talk about Tolkien.
Okay.
Because I've been rereading Fellowship of the Ring recently. First time I've been trying to read through the whole thing. Because I read it, you know, first in high school, and then I picked it up piecemeal here and there sometimes later just when I wanted to reread a passage or something. First time I think I've really sat down to try to read the whole book again, the whole Lord of the Rings, since high school. So it's been really exciting. But first off, concerning hobbits, the one of the prologues, there is so much more information in there that the first time reader doesn't really need. Yeah. I mean, some of it obviously, it's good and helpful at talking about hobbits' habits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then he also gets into like all kinds of stuff about hobbit culture and history that's really not that important to the book. So I mean, that's Tolkien kind of getting carried away with himself.
Yeah.
But then you also have some very important exposition chapters during the book, and you have the where Gandalf basically tells Frodo the entire history of the ring. Yeah, which that's a big exposition chapter. But I think
it's fun to read too.
But it's a phenomenal world building chapter, and it's funny the second time reading, because I remember first time reading is like, wow, there's a lot of information to take in. Second time reading is like, I already know all this stuff because I've been so invested in Lord of the Rings, you know, for so long since then. But that and the Council of Rivendell, Council of Elrond, excuse me. Shame on me. The Council of Elrond is also another big exposition scene, but that one's quite interesting in that a lot of different people are bringing different things to the table, and so
it's working out of all their personalities and all this.
Yeah, it's working out the personalities in addition to, okay, what else has been going on in the rest of the world that's related to all this.
Well, and I think that's where I come down to exposition is that I tend not to be quite against it as some people, because I think there's a lot of ways it can be used well, and you need, I think the modern sensibility is to explain as little as possible. But directness is a different sort of storytelling, not a bad storytelling. I mean, obviously Tolkien didn't lessen the tension or the stakes by doing exposition; he raised it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty evident from after the Shadow of the Past. I think it's chapter 2 in The Hobbit. After the end of that chapter, you're like, whoa, this is going to be a way different story than The Hobbit was.
Yeah. and I think sometimes it just, this is what Act 1 in movies largely are many times,
That's true.
And sometimes I try to show it to you instead of just tell you, but it's just, I think it'd be used in order to make things more interesting, more tension-filled, more intriguing, more colorful.
Yep, you laid the groundwork for the logical consistency of everything that follows.
Now, again, for fantasy novels and science fiction novels, sometimes I think people like concerning hobbits, authors who love their world building and readers who just want to read a story, the exposition can butt heads with the
it could be
forward momentum.
Yeah, and it could be a little bit of a barrier.
And again, there might be a place for doing that, but it might not be considered dramatic in the modern sensibility.
That's true. It really depends on your taste of the readers, because some fantasy readers love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Last thing,
okay.
Unless you have something else. But it was very interesting. Then some exposition must have made sense at one point and then doesn't anymore. When I watched Psycho recently,
the
last 10 minutes, he's explaining the psychology of the psychologist comes and kind of explains to the police officers Norman Bates' condition.
Okay.
And nowadays, you're just like,
he was crazy.
He was crazy. He took his mom. I mean, this sort of unhinged mentality is something that we see a lot in TV shows and movies and stuff. But back then, it was probably very startling and very unique. But it seems a rather flat ending nowadays. You feel like, okay, we got the interesting part, and now you're just kind of talking.
Yeah. Sometimes I do wonder if the writers, the creators, kind of shoot themselves in the foot when it comes to exposition. If they become so self-conscious of it, because like a lot of cop shows nowadays or detective shows, some people admittedly aren't watching those shows for the mystery. Like some detective shows are to a point where people are watching it for the characters, whether it's Psych or Castle, where you just want to see the goofy characters, or even some of your CBS shows are kind of like this. I mean, that's why I've watched NCIS before, is more because it's fun to see what these people are doing, and then you get a little mystery thrown into it. But then whenever, like, a lot of times of these shows, especially when they talk with the tech people, they're like, give it to me in English. And it's like, okay, so obviously if the characters don't really care about the explanations for why these, how point A goes to point B, it's very easy for me personally to like just tune out of the explanation of how you figured these things out. And so when the on-screen character doesn't care about it, why should I?
And sometimes I get that reminds me of an exposition. Sometimes you have the character emotional plot, and then you have the technical things that are happening, and they're not really related. So every once in a while, some guy will come and say, this gun will do this such a thing and do this such a thing, and like, okay, whatever, just so you can go to the next scene.
Right.
And then, you really run in two shows. You're running I'm really talking about the characters up here, but I have to make things realistic, so I'll just throw in some exposition occasionally.
And it depends on this type of show and how well they do it. Star Trek, Technobabble is basically exposition to justify how they get to do what they were doing. I mean, and Doctor Who does that sort of thing too, but considering Star Trek is supposed to be the more, realistic, scientific-y kind of show than Doctor Who is.
It is interesting. I think it does seem like in some ways we move so much to characters that the sort of exposition for why things make sense, you don't even, it's like, let's just get that done with. Yeah.
Which I think is unfortunate. I mean, sometimes some of the best parts of a good mystery are how the pieces connect together.
Yeah. And I guess it's hard, but I think probably the best sort of things when the character's journey and the technical exposition all mesh together.
Yeah, that's your.
I mean, that's your Frodo chapter.
Yeah, Because Frodo needs to know about all this stuff.
Because if Gandalf was just talking about, yes, there's this guy and he lost this ring and and you might encounter it at some point, that would be a bad exposition.
That's true. Yeah, there's immediacy there.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I need to know about this right now?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when you prepare for your exposition. See, then if you find yourself in a place where you need to write that sort of scene, as long as your characters are into it, we will too.
And it keeps things moving, and I think it keeps things a little shorter than if you have to show everything.
Yeah, that's true. Because there's also the flip side when, like you said, creator won't explain anything, and that just frustrates.
And I wonder if it seems like books are giant now. Like there's no short books, and I sometimes wonder if it's just this need to show everything.
That's a good question.
Random thought.
I have no idea.
Okay. I like big books, but some of them.
Worth considering. With that, I think it's time to move on into soundtrack. Okay, Nick, I believe you have the first soundtrack.
Yes,
here.
I had no real good inspiration in trying to pick something related to exposition, so I searched for all the title screen musics because I figured, a lot of times that's where especially in older games, they'll play kind of the setup for the game. Like, oh no, Dr. Wily's out again, sort of thing.
Right.
I just picked a random, it was new, and I thought, hey, this is a game most people have never heard of. I'll pick this music. It's from a game, I think, is it a Commodore game, I think? Called
Commodore 64.
Supremacy. Mm-hmm. It's called Pixel Storm in the Planetary System a remix by Sir Nuts, I believe.
Sir Nuts.
And it's kind of chip-tuney, dancey, dance sort of stuff. Anyways, I enjoyed it. Hope you do too.
Welcome back.
All right.
So hope you enjoy that
Pixel storm in your planetary system.
the 8-bit goodness. And for our next segment, we'll ask a very important question. What if? That's right. It is time for What If, one of our strangest segments usually.
One of our most wonderful segments.
Actually, Nick, you've got a better handle on what if will be about this time.
Okay,
so.
Here's the idea. We'll see how well our brains are working tonight. I have one or two ideas to start with. But I thought we were talking about exposition, and we were talking about my initial definition was tell, don't show. So I thought we'd take some instances where a movie or a book would just tell us something and figure out what if they had actually instead shown it. Or maybe take some sort of things when they had shown something and we said, what if they just expositioned that? So, and the common one I thought, an easy one to start off with, is the beginning of all the Star Wars movies. We'll take A New Hope in this case.
Sure.
You have the scrolling screen, which is exposition. Like, here's
That's
what
true.
you need to know to go, and it's very exciting.
Dun, 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 dun,
Like, okay,
dun, dun,
cool. But, just kind of telling what...
Get you up to speed on what's going on.
Yeah, they stole the Death Star plans.
It's almost like a previously on segment, except all text.
Exactly. And I think that was the idea first time, especially.
Yeah.
But especially with New Hope, it's like, they just stole the Death Star plans. I mean, there's a story there.
No kidding.
There's at least a 30-minute heist scene.
Or several video games or a comic book.
And I'm sure someone has done a comic book or something of it.
I think there's a couple different versions of where the Death Star plans came from.
Oh, is that in Dark Forces?
I think it's in Dark Forces.
Yeah,
one of them is,
right.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think they've I think the Death Star plans had to change hands several times by now, just in various versions of where they came from.
Okay, imagine if Star Wars didn't start with the Star Destroyer going over the screen.
Yeah.
What if it started in some base on some planet and some guy being like, I hope no one gets this Death Star plan.
Oh, that's true.
Well, you wouldn't know anything. You're just there's just some guy sneaking around. I mean, Leia didn't steal it.
No.
Someone else did.
Well, in the Dark Forces thing,
It's Kyle.
Kyle Katarn, but I don't remember if he was the first one because in other stories, I think Bothan spies had something to do with it.
No, the Bothan spies die getting the plans for the second Death Star.
Well, they did, but I thought in some versions they also were involved in the first.
Because related, Return of the Jedi said, maybe Bothans died to give us this information.
Now,
but what if we didn't see that? Why couldn't we see many Bothans dying? Everyone wants to see Bothans dying.
The funny thing is, actually, in the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars special, this is actually how they did. Well, they did do the scrolling title thing, but they did show Perry the Platypus as the one who went and stole it's really funny because they have this imperial skyscraper. It's it's literally like a skyscraper smashed on top of a Star Destroyer, and they have all these office minions and they're dressed like an office with a tie and stuff, except they also have stormtrooper helmets.
Nice.
So it's just about that. The opening thing is about him stealing the Death Star plans.
But it'd be a different. Now again, they didn't because it would have refocused the whole story.
Right. You would be I want to know more about these spy guys. Who's this princess?
The nice thing about a shared universe like Star Wars is that you'll see it at some point. There's nothing they've ever said that they have not made a story out of.
It's true.
But interesting. It would be an interesting thing. What do you change that?
Yeah.
We were also talking that I should throw in the previous examples, but if we had got to it first, in Narnia in Lion Witch Wardrobe, they kind of just say, "And this battle happened."
That's true. They don't go partly because it's a kid's book, so you don't really go into a whole lot of detail about the.
And honestly, it wouldn't be that necessary in the book.
Not really, because it's not really about that kind of stuff. I mean, it's.
But then the movie people are like, you know what?
Yeah.
You can't just say, hey, there was this war happening. So they find ways to make it all, work with the characters.
It isn't, because the Narnia, it's interesting. Narnia books are very much about the adventure. I mean, even the Lord of the Rings, they don't go into a whole lot of detail about the battle scenes. Like the battle around the Tomb of Balin, which is, in my read through of Fellowship, I've gotten to about Lothlorien. But that fight around the Tomb of Balin is just they knock heads together with a couple orcs, and that's about it. In the movies, it's a big scene with the whole troll and all that kind of stuff.
And I guess movies now especially want to show tons of action, even though it doesn't actually move the plot forward that much.
Yeah,
necessarily.
See The Hobbit. actually don't
Don't
see
see
that. But that's
Rankin and Bass do
as an
that
example.
version.
Yeah. The Hobbit movies are all about.
Now, you know what?
Yeah.
The Hobbit movies might have benefited from saying, hey, instead of showing this, we will just tell you what happened.
Yeah.
Even if you want to get that random orc that hated Thor, and you could just say, hey, there's this orc that's following me, as opposed to be like, hey, I will show you. No, it's a perfect example. Hobbit's like, yes, I'm Gandalf, and I gotta go run away for a while, and I'll come back in a bit.
Yeah.
And the Hobbit's like, I will show you everything Gandalf does, eats, sleeps.
And it becomes much less cool after you see it. Like some of that stuff, keeping it off screen, and that is actually makes it sound bigger and grander than.
But it would have been a bad choice, for instance, to take our what if you'd had the first half of Return of the King is from not Frodo and Sam's point of view, right?
The first beginning of Return of the King is Pippin,
Pippin, and yeah. Anyway, you saw that. What if then after that they find the Eagles dropped off Frodo and Sam, and they're like, "What happened?" And they're like, "Well, we were running on Mordor," and they have a chapter where they just kind of say what happened.
Yeah, you don't get in
That would be horrible.
It would be terrible because it'd just be repeating the. Well, it was really tiring, and we just walked.
I carried Frodo for a while.
ways.
What happened to your finger? I'll get to that.
We got captured by orcs for a bit, and it was really kind of touch and go. But thankfully, we were able to slip away.
Hey, Sam, sing that song you sang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be nearly as involving because you want to be there with the characters in that kind of moment. You don't want to just hear about it afterwards.
So, what's another good scene we could take that we see in a book or a movie that we could just say?
Mission Impossible.
Okay.
Let's go back to say the first one. It's like he meets up with one of his old friends, and he's like, "Well, we broke into the CIA headquarters, and we got this disc."
But you know what? That happens in spy things sometimes, where they're like,
That's
they're
true,
like,
yeah.
I said, here we got this. They just. I had connections. Here's the disc.
Yeah. And maybe there actually was a whole story behind it. That they just trying to make themselves sound cool. It's like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal.
But and I think it really depends. If you had done that, then obviously hopefully the story's somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, obviously in the first Mission Impossible, you need that scene.
Yeah, that whole
that shows you that
the whole breaking in, the whole I mean that's what Mission Impossible is. Yeah, when Mission Impossible is good, that's what it's about. It's about the sneaking into places and disguises and all that good stuff.
So okay,
all right. So there's what's another iconic scene that would be really dull?
To move off screen.
Yeah, to move off screen.
Let's see.
Indiana Jones.
And what part?
Well,
I mean, the ending's half off screen, anyways.
Well, okay, of Raiders, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm thinking like his exploration of the temple. I mean, yes, you sort of see his like abbreviated version when he's telling Marcus. There's like, I had it in my hands. And it's like, well, there's a whole lot more to it.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have had to seen it.
I suppose not.
I mean, you could have just been like, you could just say, "Hey, I'm going to start." He's going to be a professor, and then, oh wait, he's a explorer.
Uh-huh.
And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I almost had it, and we had this run in, and
yeah." But
it would have lost a lot.
It would have lost a lot because you really, I mean, that whole opening sequence, the whole opening gambit, I guess you could say. I mean, that just gets you into the kind of what kind of movie this is going to be. And I mean, and honestly, for an adventure movie, you want to be able to hook people in right away.
Yeah. Yeah, adventure you want to show as much as possible.
Yeah.
Usually,
even James Bond, which spoiler alert, my soundtrack is going to be James Bond themed. But they don't start off usually with the briefing. They start off with some crazy action sequence. Then they go to the opening credits, the crazy title sequence with the crazy singer, and then they go into the briefing telling, okay, what's Bond's mission actually going to be about. So people know you go to see James Bond, you want action. You want same thing with Indiana Jones. So you start off with something exciting, then you can go explain it or talk about something new, because the opening gambit, you don't really need to know a whole lot about whatever is going on. You're just kind of thrown into it.
It seems like all the choices we've picked so far, they actually chose the right version. We need to find one when we're like, no, that would have been a lot better if they would have shown that or not shown that.
Where we could actually improve a movie.
Maybe. I'm probably not. I mean, most good movies we're going to think of, you're not going to necessarily improve. We could pick bad movies.
I was trying to think, how could Transformers be improved by
not showing anything?
Yeah. Maybe if it was like
from the Transformers point of view would be helpful.
That would be kind of interesting. Like maybe you'd like the humans in the movie are always like, little specks on the screen. So you don't actually ever get a close up on any of the human co-stars. That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting. Like you don't have to hear all the backstory about Sam Witwicky or anything.
Okay, let's see.
So say Lost, the smoke monster comes out first thing, and they say, "Oh, it's some security system / judge / protector of the island."
Yeah, that would be kind of you would lose people because Lost is all about the mystery.
None of that, but you were not ready for that.
Yeah. No. Most people didn't even realize when Locke was talking about backgammon how important that scene was going to wind up being over the course of the show.
Okay, it's mystery, so that doesn't really work.
Yeah. So trying to think of
here's an interesting something that actually happened. I watched Grace Point and Broadchurch. If you don't know, Broadchurch was the original one from Britain. It's this in Britain it was 8 episodes mystery. Mm-hmm. The American was Grace Point. It was 10 episodes, and I watched the American one first, thought it was good. Watched the British one and thought, the American one had all kinds of stuff you didn't need.
They just expanded it.
They tried to. They changed the ending a little bit, and they tried to throw you off, and you realize the British was just cleaner. Better. But it was very interesting because there's at least 2 instances where in one version they did exposition, with the other version they showed it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which was which?
Switched actually.
The American showed and
like in one version, there's this scene where this priest comes up on the kid who's beating up his laptop. They both show that. In the American one, then the priest comes up and says, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" He's like, "Oh, it's none of your business." And then the priest's like, "I'm going to tell someone." And the boy's like, "If you tell them, I'll tell anyone. I'll tell them that you hit me." In the British version, you always see is him come up on the boy or see him doing it. And then later on, when the detective visits the priest, he's like, here's the computer. The boy said that if I gave this to you, he'd say that I hit him.
Huh.
It was very interesting. And the thing is, though, the priest said the same thing in the American version, too.
Oh, really?
So we saw it, and then he said it.
Oh, interesting.
And then anyways, then the reveal of the mystery, which I won't say, but in both versions, we had kind of a back and forth in the American version of some guy saying it, and we seeing some and saying and seeing some, like flashbacks interspersed. In the British version, he came in there, he said, "I did it," and then this 10-minute flashback, which I think worked better
in
the British version.
Okay.
It was very interesting. I actually saw them choosing different choices.
Interesting.
For largely the same show.
Uh-huh. Because it's basically the same plot.
Very similar. And there's lots of little things like that. But yeah. That's not quite a what if. That probably should have been in story school, but
we're kind of going back and forth with them today.
Yeah.
So, okay. We're trying to find something that we want to improve by doing it the other way. We need something, probably it's going to be something that we didn't
So like Rotor.
Rotor.
Less exposition would always be better than Rotor.
Yeah. Or even... Or
no one knows what we're talking about.
Rotor is this crazy movie that Nick got from Riff Tracks. It's kind of a RoboCop Terminator ripoff, except with incomprehensible dialogue.
The most ridiculous dialogue you've ever seen.
And other things.
Heard.
But in some cases, maybe Rotor would benefit by a little more exposition if they explain why he had this weakness to car horns.
That's true. Okay, so the robot.
Or why they didn't use it.
Yeah, that's true. They almost didn't want to explain anything because I don't think they really cared.
I don't think they had answers to some of this stuff.
What's a good science fiction? Because science fiction shows tend to be the ones where you're right on the board between showing and Doctor Who does this sometimes. There are a lot of times they'd be like, I went and did all this stuff with so people, and we've never seen it.
That's true.
But normally it's not. It's more of a throwaway thing. It's not.
A lot of times,
important.
They give you the idea that he's been off running and doing other adventures. When the camera's not on him. What do you think about? I talked about technobabble earlier. In some ways, this technobabble becomes sort of a crutch, exposition tool instead of actually showing you them doing something. I don't know if that makes any sense. Because sometimes, wave the sonic screwdriver around and I don't know where I'm going with this. Because I guess that is sort of a showing thing, but it's also at the same time, it's like, well, I just reverse the
polarity of the nominally quark
of the neutron flow.
Yeah.
That's what I did, obviously.
Yeah, but that's more just explaining what the waving of the thing than.
Yeah,
I mean,
suppose that's true.
it's not. You can't replace one with the other.
Yeah, I guess not. This is I think
the Star Wars was good. The Star Wars was a good starting point, but then I kind of lost it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. Okay, I just now thought of it. We were doing a podcast. Lost Horizon. Okay, there's that long scene where the old man who's in charge kind of explains why he needs the new guy to take over.
Okay.
I don't know. Is there a way you could have then again, back in the 30s, they wouldn't ever have done it. They didn't do flashbacks and stuff like that. They didn't. It was a much more play oriented. You can talk for long periods of time and no one cares.
That's true. Especially, and actually, the talking was sort of a part of the novelty of the whole thing. Especially, early talking.
But there's a long there's been many generations and they're all been corrupt, and I came here and helped them. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
In a modern movie, they would show scenes of, he might start talking, maybe they might even have him voiceover.
Uh-huh.
But they really would probably add a lot more.
That's an interesting point.
And I think older movies, you might be able to find these places where maybe it wouldn't be better, but it certainly would be interesting.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. You could almost imagine him beginning a tale, then going even a flashback
and
to
just
seeing
show
him
things
going through that process.
I'm not sure it would be, I don't think it would. I'm not sure it would benefit the movie the way it was set up.
No, because then it would almost
stylistically it was very
because doing the flashback, then it becomes almost a little bit more about the priest than about the survivors reacting to the utopia.
Well, here's another question. Okay, we just watched over Christmas break. It's a Wonderful Life, Frank Capra again. But you start off with a shot of the space and the angels talking
about this.
That's exposition.
George Bailey guy. Yeah, that's true.
Is there any reason for that to be in there?
I guess only to
set up
the angel coming later. Probably.
I guess you need to set up something except what if you played it where there wasn't any setup and you had this old guy you didn't know if he was an angel or not?
That would be different. I mean that'd be a much more modern version
of it. I'm not sure it would be better, but it certainly would be.
It'd be interesting.
You might.
I guess
you'd almost have to set up some sort of supernatural thing somehow earlier.
Probably. I mean, there is the movie The Bishop's Wife, where Cary Grant is similar to he's an angel, and it's kind of left ambiguous for a long time whether he actually is an angel or not. But in that movie, he's there through the whole thing.
Okay, yeah,
that's kind of the whole
coming
idea
in.
about that.
I guess the problem would be you'd have to have the perception that an angel could show up in the world of this movie.
Yeah. You have to have that sort of expectation built in.
But I guess early on, though, you got a couple where the voiceover and why are we doing this? It's almost unnecessary in some ways.
Yeah.
Parts of it. Anyway,
that is an interesting one.
I'm trying to think of old school stuff because it's almost easier to.
Okay. This would not improve the movie, but it would make it a very not as interesting movie. The Princess Bride.
Okay.
The entire movie is the grandfather telling his grandson a story. You don't ever actually see the characters at all.
That'd be horrible.
The entire movie is exposition.
Well, here's the other thing. What if you didn't have the grandfather at all? I mean, that's largely exposition and stops the thing and has true love. He explains
certain things.
I
guess in that one, the whole grandfather conceit is that kind of helps you buy into this fairy tale sort of idea.
And I guess that's something we've never really talked about when in our story school exposition. In many ways, exposition can help figure out there's certain stylistic things that require or are expected to have more of this exposition. Certain fairy tales have this more of a talkiness as opposed to showiness.
The storyteller.
Yeah.
Where you actually have a storyteller kind of verbally giving the thing.
Now, that would be interesting. What if the storyteller was without a storyteller?
I'm sure it would still be interesting, but you would lose kind of the whole aspect of the narration. Actually adds a lot to it. It grounds it in the origins of these stories. Of oral stories. I mean, that's how stories used to be told before, printing presses and stuff like that.
And I wonder in some way, and going back to stories of school now, but I wonder in some ways if our attitude towards exposition changes based on largely on what we think stories should do. When stories were more grounded as an example,
That's
or
true.
as then exposition was kind of,
Jesus telling parables.
Yeah.
In those cases, the storyteller was an important part of it. The narrator was a very important part of it.
And the closer you get to stories being verisimilitude, that they're not examples, they're not versions, but they're life,
Mm-hmm.
the more you hate exposition.
That's quite possible. Yeah, because that's an interesting point. Yeah, because in a lot of stories, you don't want the one guy that's just explaining the viewpoint of the author, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
You want that to kind of come out, and you want to be able to pull out these things.
The more
of your
realistic. So we need. Okay. So last thing before. Well, I don't know how much time we got, but is there a really realistic story that we could ruin?
Well, I thought of one.
Or like Princess Bride was a very fairy tale one that, if you took out the exposition, becomes far less fairy tale in many ways.
Yeah, you might think it's trying to be more of just a straight up fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would become more fantasy if you got rid of the exposition.
And I guess in some ways, I wonder if you would even lose a sense of satire from the Princess Bride, because it's very, I don't know, maybe not. It depends on.
It's hard. It'd be hard to know how it would be. The satire would come off different.
Yeah, I think it would, because you have the sort of this, conceit of, we recognize this is just a fairy tale sort of thing. Then you get to play with it a bit more. But then again, Disney plays, with different movies have played with fairy tale, Shrek. I mean, that's not Disney, but there have been other movies that have played with the fairy tale without having a narrator.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll see. Yeah.
But without the grandfather, then Princess Bride isn't the Princess Bride movie. I mean, that's just the way that movie is.
It's not the same.
Yeah. I guess, have you seen Unbroken?
Yes.
So there's a movie told very little, actually, that's a very experiential movie. I mean, and that the autobiography of that was originally told by, this guy was telling the writer his life.
Yeah.
Basically. But the way it's told nowadays, it's told very much you're there with him.
And it's brutal.
It is very brutal.
And apparently not near as brutal as the book is.
Yeah, from what I've heard. Yeah.
No, the interesting thing about Unbroken then is that you're right. It is very experiential, except then there's a whole nother story, basically, that's only in the kind of
the end credits.
The end credits.
That's true. Yeah.
You're like, but that's also a story I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Half spoiler. So he goes. He's a POW and abused and everything. Mm-hmm. And basically, after he gets back, he gets converted and then forgives all his captors. I mean, that's the whole movie in itself.
It is.
But all we get is 3 lines.
But it's
exposition, yeah.
Yeah, it's exposition. And it's really intriguing. You're like, what?
Yeah. It's a very interesting use of exposition because, it wants to bring... The problem with the movie is you couldn't have put it in the movie because it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. It is a whole different thing. I know some Christians were a little disappointed because the most Christian part of it is in some ways in the after part, but
you need a mini series or a 4-hour movie. I mean, it would have.
Yeah, it would have been.
You had to restructure everything.
It's a completely different arc in a sense. I mean, obviously, it ties directly into what happened to him. Yeah, basically, or the. Well, I don't know. I guess maybe even that though depends on your perspective on things, because in Tolkien's perspective, part of the whole because I did one of my important papers in college was about coming of age in fantasy.
Okay,
and I read one of the articles I read about it talked about how Tolkien's perspective of coming of age in fantasy was that the hero comes home and then how does he deal with the things afterwards? And that's where you get the scouring of the Shire. Yeah. So I guess in one perspective you could say even that in Unbroken, what happens afterward is just as important as what happens during the trials.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you do get that information in just giving it as an exposition. But I guess I do think, like we said earlier, there is a degree of this that it depends on the age, the taste of the current culture, and probably also even a bit on the media involved. I mean, because in the medium like a book, you can have these 2 different sections.
Yeah,
and a movie typically has to be about. Depending on what type of movie, but it's usually about one thing.
And I think exposition is much harder to pull off well in a movie in many ways.
Right. And you can't get away, again, because you don't want to rely too much on a narrator and a visual medium like that. That's where storyteller is a great in oral tradition, obviously, but not so much in a visual one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went way into story school, and this one definitely kind of melded the two.
Maybe we should have done our example, our what if first this time. No, that would have been weird.
Yeah, I don't know if that would have worked.
What if we had done? Oh, wait. We need more book examples next time. The problem is it's so hard to pull out.
That's true.
Books that everyone's read well.
Yeah, and I
like for instance, Les Mis might have been much shorter if you would just summarize things.
Well, and it's so much easier to get a repertoire of movies or TV shows because you can get through them a lot faster than, at least personally me. I love to have read more books.
Yeah.
But it takes me a lot longer. So especially when I go back and reread Lord of the Rings.
Which takes a while.
You
can't read Tolkien fast.
Or
I don't know there's any way to read it fast.
Yeah. And even I'm not like, for me, it's usually just like on a Sunday, you know, on a weekend.
Yeah, that's where I get a lot of mine. Some evenings and
yeah.
All right.
You're Brandon Sanderson.
I'm halfway through it.
Yeah. You read another. What's the sequel? The Way of Kings. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Words of Radiance. I got it for my birthday and started sometime in December. I'm 550 pages into it. Halfway.
That's halfway.
It's good stuff.
I'm sure it is. I will probably not be joining you.
Get in at ground level. Don't start when there's like 10 books.
All right. Well,
all right. Sounds good.
I guess we better wrap up.
All right.
So
contact info.
You can always listen to us on our website, derailedtrainsofthought.blogspot.com.
You can listen to us on iTunes or Stitcher. And then we're also on YouTube.
Yes. I fell behind. I got up to about 40 episodes on YouTube before Thanksgiving. And then things fell apart.
Much of us is on YouTube.
Yes. A lot of us are on YouTube. I am working to get more of it on. And of course, also don't forget about our new experience, the Weekly Hijack,
which will be on iTunes and Stitcher soon.
If it's not
been
already
submitted, by the time you get this, it hopefully will be.
Yeah.
And then also that's at Blogspot or Derailed Trains of Thought. Derailed Trains of Thought.blogspot.com. On the sidebar, there's a little button and there's a whole player, but we're not gonna.
Yeah, like I said,
there's not write-ups or anything. It's just quick and dirty.
Yep. So, and like I said, if you're not into a Lost rewatch, maybe stay tuned. In March, we'll be getting to Once Upon a Time.
And eventually, probably some Doctor Who.
Whenever a new season. I have no idea when the next season begins.
Probably like 2 years or something.
Could be. All right. Better go ahead and introduce my soundtrack here. My soundtrack today, like I said, I decided to go with something from Bond because, that debriefing, that's always kind of where you get the Exposition download for who the bad guy is and what Bond's mission is going to be. So I went with something from the classic game GoldenEye 007. I just always called it GoldenEye, but that's what they call it in OC remakes, GoldenEye 007. But this is called Controlled Jazz, and it's one of the most Bondy songs that is on there. And this is done by Mustin and Scott Peebles, both awesome jazz remixers on completely. OC Remix. So, Nick, do you have what you were going to buy here?
I'm not buying anything here.
Oh, really? You decided not to make any deals?
No. No, he explained quite a bit about how this would, the scandal would defeat my worst enemy and, this hand would help me, be better and such things. But I know.
I had my eye on a teacup over there, but he snatched it away before I could get close to it. So.
Odd.
Yeah,
normally we will impart about anything.
Yeah, he's got some interesting priorities.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. So anyway, but thanks for listening, folks. We hope to see you next time. And until then, this has been Tim.
This has been Nick.
Adios.
Bye.